Alcohol. Alcohol does a lot to people.
Yes, but I never said I was drunk.
Okay.
You did.
So you did this sober. You knowingly left him down there sober.
I have already told both of you also that we were both drinking.
It doesn't matter that you don't identify with the actions that you took. You did it. Drinking is the intent. Hello everybody, my name is Uhari. Welcome to my channel, Delululand, where I talk about whatever it is I want to talk about. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most delusional people whose lives we can observe on the internet, and it is somebody who goes by the name of Sarah Boone. Before I talk about Sarah Boone, I would just like to take a brief moment to appreciate Florida. Florida has these laws that make everything crime-centric available to the public. I'm talking 911 calls, I'm talking body cam footage, I'm talking interrogation footage, and I'm talking courtroom footage. It's insane just how much information that the public can request about the cases in Florida and how much of it is currently on YouTube. A large percentage of the body cam footage that we have available online comes from Florida because of their laws. And because of this, we have this moment in history that has never before existed where you can truly witness somebody's life crumble. From the moment the call is made all the way to the conviction in the courtroom, you can follow somebody's case that closely, and that level of intimacy to me is insane. But it's a thing that exists in the current world that we're living in. So thank you, Florida, for the endless entertainment you've provided people all over the world. Sometimes we just need to look at some other crazy shit to make ourselves feel better, and that is what Florida is for the world. Today we're going to be talking about somebody who is perhaps the most infamous criminal to come out of Florida, and that is a person by the name of Sarah Boone. Before I get into it, I've linked 2 videos about Sarah Boone's case. They're both very extensive, so I suggest you watch those videos before you watch this video if you are not familiar with the case. If you are familiar with the case, great, because I'm not going to be going into detail. I'm just going to be talking about it like I'm talking to a friend who is also familiar with this. Like, we watched it together and now we get to talk about it. Okay. Sarah Boone is clearly a very delusional person. She has her perceived self, who she thinks she is, how she views herself, and then there's her real self, the self that other people interact with, and those 2 selves are night and day. Her perceived and projected self in her mind is a kind, empathetic, intelligent woman. But the reality of her life is she is not kind, she is not empathetic, and she is most certainly not intelligent. Now, what made this case so impactful on me is the involvement of alcohol. Now, if you've seen my videos or you haven't, I am a recovering alcoholic, and when I watched Sarah's video, it reminded me of the reason why it was so important for me to stop drinking. See, I had found out some stuff about my personality when I was in high school, and I was in my first intense emotional relationship. The feelings were very intense, and I, again, at this point, undiagnosed with bipolar, am trying to navigate these very intense feelings and my very intense love for this individual. And at some point, I was becoming very verbally abusive to this person that I loved, and something about fearing losing them, fearing the thought of losing that person made me act in ways I didn't understand. And after that relationship ended, I just knew that there was something wrong with me, right? I knew there was something that I should deal with before I even attempt to enter into another relationship, because I was abusive. These are hard things to accept about yourself, by the way. They really are. But I came to a point where I wanted to accept some truths about myself. I have a vision for my life, what I want my future to look like, and I don't ever want to hurt someone that I love the way I hurt him. And if I was capable of doing that at the age of 17, 18, can you imagine what I would be like later in life had I allowed myself to continue on that road? I would be somebody like Sarah, who has no shot at maintaining a healthy long-term relationship. I would be somebody who is very reactive and somebody who emotes in the moment without thinking how that action will affect the people around them. So you take that pre-existing abusive trait, right? You couple it with alcohol and you make something that's terrible. You make something that's just the worst possible version of that life. So I did not want to do that. And I took decisions to structure my life in such a way that I would focus firstly on the psychological problems so that later in life, should I have a relationship, should I be the type of person who ends up starting a family, I wouldn't then pass on my trauma and my issues to my children, right? I wanted to be able to one day, if I so desire and feel like I've gotten to the pace where I'm ready, if I want to be a parent and a wife, I want to be good at those things. My biggest fear was attaining success and then having no idea how to manage it and then just losing it all, right? As much as one can desire to be successful, when you observe the lives of really successful people, you see the ability to bounce back, a tenacity, a resilience. And a lot of people who have gained a lot and then lost it and gained it again would talk about going to therapy and dealing with like their psychological trauma. So I was like, well, why not do the whole deal with the psychological trauma thing? That way, when I do attain the level of success that I desire, I can keep it instead of losing it, right? This is just my frame of mind growing up. I just wanted to make sure that I can build a solid foundation for whatever may come. Now, somebody like Sarah, on the other hand, is not contemplative. People like Sarah are unlikely to seek psychological help because they don't perceive themselves as needing help. They see perfection in themselves and they feel like all their actions, even if they may be antisocial, are justified. Everything about them is self-protection. So when her marriage was on the rocks and they were going to couples counseling, Sarah wasn't there to improve as much as she was trying to keep him. And when she did get there, she couldn't be honest about the issues. So her husband saw that it wasn't going to work and then they divorced. So Sarah is not the type of person who can be remedied, right? So we have this person and now she's an uncontrolled alcoholic and she is in a relationship with somebody who also likes to drink as much as she does. And this relationship that she has is then mutually abusive. You have two alcoholics that are constantly fighting, neighbors, family members. People are witnessing this level of dysfunction. They're calling the police on each other. There's charges laid. It's just a dysfunctional relationship all the way around. So where do we as the public come in? Why do we even know about this person? Like, what happened? What did Sarah Boone do? Sarah Boone played a game of hide and seek. Now, I don't know how you play hide and seek in Florida, but here in South Africa, when you play hide and seek, one of you is not supposed to know where the other is, right? There has to be a hider and a seeker. the seeker can't help the hider hide, because then there is no seeking, because they know exactly where they were. And the amount of times that Sarah doubled down on this being a game of hide and seek was just insane. Sarah's one of those people who are used to manipulating the people in their lives, right? And when people are very manipulative, what they tend to do is they surround themselves with people who are easy to manipulate. So these people start to have an inflated sense of their intelligence because they're surrounding themselves with idiots and they manipulate the idiots. But once they are in the company of people who have free will and who have their own eyes to judge and aren't manipulated, when people like Sarah are in that position, they're completely frustrated. Like, I'm saying these things. Why aren't you believing me? Why can't I control you right now? And you see it as she talks to the investigators in the interrogation. She gets more and more frustrated because they're just not accepting her answers the way she wants them to accept them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, cool. So they're playing hide and seek, apparently. So apparently in Florida, hide and seek, the seeker helps the hider find. And so in whatever drunken state they are, they decide, why not? Let's try and see if you can fit inside of the suitcase. So Sarah and the victim start playing this game of hide and seek, whereby she now zips the victim in the bag, right? And prior to a video of the evening being found on the phone that Sarah had, prior to a video of the night being found, Sarah narrates a different story, right? In Sarah's story, the initial one, they were having such a lovely evening. Actually, it was a lovely day. They played, they laughed, they painted, and they even played puzzles.
So we're talking about Sunday and then
That's
into
why
Monday.
I'm thoroughly confused, because we had a good time sitting on the back porch, having wine, and smoking a couple of cigarettes, and then decided to go inside and literally paint, do puzzles, and play.
When you look at the person who's telling the story and the picture they're trying to paint, one of these is not like the other, and they're just not coming together, okay? But okay, police can grant you that. You're painting, you're doing whatever. You have a little giggle. Hey, what if you get in the suitcase? You know, wouldn't it be funny if you could fit? And I'm sure that's how it started. So the victim gets inside the suitcase, Sarah zips him up, and all of a sudden things aren't cute or funny anymore. She has him in this confined space that she wants him in, and now she starts letting out all her frustrations, right? She waits for him to get uncomfortable, and now he starts begging her, like, Sarah, let me out of here. Sarah, I can't breathe. Sarah. Sorry, as I'm saying that, I'm just remembering the sound of his voice on the recording, and it's weird to hear somebody's last moments. It's weird, and there's an emotional toll to it. I don't like the thought of it. I don't like that I have that memory, because I can hear his voice, Sarah, I can't breathe, Sarah. It's available, like, if you watch the true crime documentaries, you'll see it, but it's not nice. You can hear this person desperately wanting air. And Sarah is having fun. She's having her little revenge moment. And she's like, yeah, well, this is how you make me feel when you choke me. This is how you make me feel when you're cheating on me with other girls. This is how I feel. And he's begging and begging to get out of the suitcase because he can't breathe. Sarah taunts him. And then eventually she goes upstairs and she falls asleep. She wakes up in the morning and he's in the suitcase and he's dead. And then she makes the 911 call.
This is a police or medical. My boyfriend is dead.
Okay, send the line for the fire department. Do not hang up.
No, tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in a case and we were playing, and like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase. So I don't know what happened.
After she calls 911, the police arrive, and then it's on. Got the body cam footage, and you can see this woman's reaction the morning after she realizes that she has killed her boyfriend. And as she speaks, she's continuously using speech in which she's trying to absolve herself. And one of the excuses that she comes to latch onto is that she was drunk. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Sarah started off saying that she wasn't drunk, that she doesn't even like getting drunk, that she doesn't like to be in a position where she's not in control of her mind, and she has 2 to 3 drinks, and, you know, she doesn't want to get to a place where she doesn't have a wits about herself. She says that.
Well, yesterday it made it sound like you guys were just drinking like a glass or two. Like, yeah, you obviously had the bottle, but you told me on recording, like, that you were not drunk, he was not drunk, you guys were having a good time.
I can't get drunk. Number one, I do not want to get drunk. I don't like being non-compos mentis, having my wits about myself. I don't like feeling out of control.
Later on, after the video surfaces, because she was so drunk, she didn't even remember she took a video. After that video resurfaces, she then wants to blame it on alcohol.
I have one last question. You realize you're the person that killed him, right?
I thought about that.
Okay, you left him in a bag when he's begging you, saying, I can't breathe, let me out, and you said, fuck you. And you got up off the couch and went upstairs and left him in that bag.
Not intentionally.
Again,
I would never do that to George.
you did.
Not intentionally. Know that.
I don't.
Know that.
You got up and you went up to bed.
Alcohol is a shitty thing. It's alcohol.
It's hilarious, as hilarious as something like that can be. But when you look at the footage of the first interview and then you compare it with the second interview, it's frustrating how much her story starts to change. Whenever there is something that doesn't reflect positively on her, she changes it. She tries to victimize herself and she tries to push the blame onto the victim. But Sarah comes to this excuse that she was drunk, it was the alcohol. And she latches on to a word. Very important word when it comes to crime. That word is intent.
Like this. I did not intentionally do this. No malicious content or effort was towards this. No malicious. There's no maliciousness towards that.
So I would probably be telling myself that too after that video.
My intent was not for that to happen.
Sarah repeatedly says, but it was not intentional, but it was not intentional, but it was not intentional, right? The investigators take her through a timeline of the events over and over again, and by now they've locked her in a bunch of lies. Because what they do is, in the first interview, they just let her speak. Come on, here's my shoulder, cry my shoulder. Tell me all the things that you feel the need to tell me. And they gave reassuring nods, and they allowed her to speak, and it made her feel like she was in control. But in the second interview, and they started push back against the things that she's saying, because now they have the video, now they have the proof, right? And it's in front of her. Now, they're forcing her to come to this conclusion of, yeah, but you killed him. Because it takes a very long time for her to just mentally accept that she killed him, right? she was very kind of detached from her actions because it was just a game. It was just a game. It was just innocent. He played along. This was all just one big accident. And because she drank that night and went to bed and woke up, she says that she didn't intentionally kill him. She didn't intend to leave him in the suitcase. It's very frustrating to watch somebody with free will try to deny the actions that they took, especially when they're confronted with evidence. Because she kept trying to make it seem as though she left him with enough room to breathe, like she wasn't intentionally trying to kill him. And perhaps we can say that. We can say that perhaps she didn't want to kill him. Perhaps this was just a very negligent accident that happened to somebody who got too drunk and then went upstairs and forgot, oh, by the way, my boyfriend's in a suitcase screaming, saying he can't breathe, Okay, she didn't intend to do it, but she did it. He's dead. You and your actions killed him. But it wasn't intentional. It wasn't my intent. It wasn't my intent. You don't have to intend to kill someone to kill them, right? Which is what happened, allegedly. Just because it wasn't your intention doesn't mean that wasn't the outcome of your actions. See, Sarah is an alcoholic. And alcoholics, when they're drunk, act in ways that are very different from their character when they're sober. But the problem is when you're constantly drinking, that asshole that you are when you're drunk that becomes who you are. You spend most of your hours drunk, so you spend most of your hours being that asshole. But nobody wants to directly associate with the worst parts of their character, right? Addiction involves a lot of disassociating. Like, that's not me. That's not what I'm like when I'm sober. That's not me, but it is you. You zipped him up in the suitcase and left him there, and he died because of you. It doesn't matter that you feel you didn't intend to kill him. You killed him. You're still culpable for your actions because you took the decision to drink. I remember years ago I'd seen this true crime case of this guy who had gotten blackout drunk. And blackout drunk is there where your brain is like no longer making memories. And your base self takes over, your animalistic self, the self that's in the amygdala, the parts of your character that you don't directly identify with, the parts of you that are lower, that's the person who takes control over your life when you are in that blackout state. And in that blackout state, this man bludgeoned his mother and father to death. And I sat on that for quite a long time, just running it in my head, wondering, does he deserve to spend his entire life in prison when he doesn't even have memory of doing this? But it is him who did this. But the part of him that did this isn't the day part of him. If he wasn't drunk, he wouldn't have bludgeoned his parents. It doesn't matter that he had that desire. It was in a place that his conscious self still had power over. He could suppress it. But in this blackout state, you just become an emotion that has been given the ability to govern a human body. And that emotion just takes over. And then you pass out. You wake up the next morning and you have to sift through the carnage of what you've done. And what he had done is kill his parents. I eventually realized that in the eyes of the law, you are responsible. Obviously, you don't have to have memory of it, you did it. And although that may feel unfair to a certain extent, I understood that when you take that many drinks, you're making the decision to put yourself in a position where you can't govern yourself. You are making the decision to be vulnerable to extremely self-destructive behavior and extremely antisocial behavior. The decision to be vulnerable to extremely self-destructive behavior and extremely antisocial behavior. You take the decision to drink, and that decision is what's going to send you to jail. Because it doesn't matter that you don't identify with the actions that you took, you did it. Drinking is the intent. Because you allowed yourself to be that vulnerable. You allowed yourself to be in a state of mind where you could perform a lot of harm. So it doesn't matter that in Sarah Boone's mind, putting somebody in a suitcase and then laughing at them while they tell you that they're struggling to breathe. Whilst in her mind, that isn't intentional murder. The reality is he lost his life. And his family has to mourn him. And that's a very unfair thing. She took away somebody's life. It wasn't her place to do it. And she'll never take accountability for it. Sarah Boone is the queen of Delululand. Do you know what a shitty person you have to be dropped by not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 public defenders? 6 people dropped the bitch. 6 people said, I can't do this. 6. This bitch is never going to get to trial because she loses every freaking lawyer she has because she's delusional. She's one of those people who's seen way too much TV and it's like, I know my rights. I know my rights. It's like, bitch, you poor. Your rights is, you get what you get, okay? That's it. You aren't a millionaire. You aren't a super important person. You're just an alcoholic who murdered her boyfriend and refuses to take accountability for it. Be careful when you drink, because the decision to drink is consenting to whatever results come from that drinking. So be careful how much you drink. Because do I believe that when she was sober she would have done this? No. I think that if she was sober, she would have had enough mind about her to think, like, the consequences of this action. I think she was just so drunk and so emotional that she didn't care. She didn't care about him. She didn't consider him. She didn't even think about what he felt like. She got her revenge and then she went upstairs and she went to bed and then she woke up and she called the police and then she tried to blame a man who was zipped into a suitcase for his own murder. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. A special thank you to Florida. Thank you for existing, being an endless cesspit of entertainment for the rest of the world, being a way for us to go, hey, at least I'm not that bad. Things are bad, but are they Florida bad? We need something like that in life just to make the rest of us feel like we're functional or sane. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my video. Please like, comment, subscribe once more. Thank you for all the increased support I've been getting. Much love to you guys. Bye.